Before even jumping in and writing code at all, you're gonna need to set up your environment. So for the first video in Learning Program series for Python, what we're gonna do is set up our environment. So I'm on a Windows 10 virtual machine right now running in Hyper-V, and I just deployed it, so it's bare bones. There's really nothing here. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to Google here, and I'm gonna type in Python in Google. The first site that you're going to see is python.org. We're going to click on python.org. You're going to go to downloads, and then you're going to see a few different releases, but primarily you're going to see the newest release that's no longer in beta and is ready to go right in the downloads page. But if we go to Windows, for example, as you can see, there's a whole bunch of different versions. So there's this version of 3.8, we have 2.7, 3.7.7, 3.8.2, 3.8.1, 3.7.6. The list goes on and on. You get the point. There's a bunch of different versions here for Windows. Now, to just kind of be up to date and deploy the latest for in terms of a stable release. So there's some pre-releases here, and then there's stable releases. Now we're going to want the stable release. To deploy that stable release, we're going to go to downloads and Python 3.8.3. We're going to run this, and this is going to start the executable for us. Should pop up any second here, and oh, here it is. So there's a few different ways that you can install it. You can either install now or custom. So I typically just do install now. It's just going to go through and do all the automatic setup for us. The most important thing is make sure you add Python to path. That way, when you open up like PowerShell or something like that, you could just type Python and then boom, you're automatically in Python. If you don't do that, you'll have to, go to the path every single time that you're gonna run Python. So you wanna add that to your path. Then we're gonna click install now. We're gonna click yes here. And this is going to go through and install for us. And then at the end of the installation, what we can do is we can open up PowerShell, for example, and we can see that we can open up Python, and Python 3.8 will open up for us. So let's just go ahead and give this a few more minutes here, and this should be done pretty shortly. All right, this setup was successful, and then we can go ahead and we can close this out. So now, for example, let's open up PowerShell. We're going to type Python. And boom, now Python 3.8.3 is here. Now to exit out of Python, and we're going to learn more about methods later on in the series, but to exit out, we're going to use the exit method. So we're going to type exit, open, close, and enter. Boom, and now we're out. And then we can exit out of PowerShell, and we'll be good to go in that front. Now, the second part is, what IDE do you want to use? What text editor do you want to use? Where do you want to write the code? So there's going to be two: Visual Studio Code, which I already have here actually, and PyCharm. Now, if you've never installed Visual Studio Code before, let's just go through the process here. We'll type in VS Code, the first link here, and then you could just download the build for whichever operating system you're running on. Now I already have that installed, so I'm not going to reinstall it here. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to open it up for us. Now I'm going to close out of this program.cs, and what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the Python extension. So within VS Code, what you want to do is you want to click on the extensions icon, and we can actually see Python's right up here, but it may look different for you in terms of the popularity if and when you watch the video. So by simply typing in Python, this is going to be the official Python extension from Microsoft, and it's going to do things for you like linting, which we'll learn about, debugging. It'll colorize everything for you, IntelliSense, autocomplete. It'll give you all of those cool tools that you can use within Python in Visual Studio. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to install that here. And this is going to install our extension. Should take maybe a few seconds. It doesn't take very long. Yeah, here you go. It's already installed for us. And then here we have a tip where we can change the Python interpreter from the version and the status. So right here is exactly what it's talking about. If we click here, and let's say like we had other versions of Python, since we only have one option here, but we can actually go ahead and click through and change the interpreter here for different versions of Python. So now Visual Studio Code is set up. The next thing that we want to do is install PyCharm. So I personally really like PyCharm. I used to actually pay for the subscription, but for what I'm doing right now, the free version's fine. For what you're going to do in this series, the free version is perfectly fine. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to Google this and I'm going to go to PyCharm. Now, I misspelled that. It's okay. So I'm going to click on PyCharm. So PyCharm is an IDE by JetBrains, and JetBrains has a lot of really rich IDEs for other languages like Java, for example. Now, the main reason why I like PyCharm, to be honest, is because it creates a virtual environment for you. Now, you can create a virtual environment in your terminal using PENV, but it kind of gives you like it just feels a little bit cleaner in my opinion when I use PyCharm. So the idea behind it is, and you can go ahead and click this download button. So the idea behind it is you have a virtual environment that you're actually installing all your libraries from. So for example, and again, we're going to talk about libraries later, but let's say you're installing like some libraries because you want to use some code and you install that library in PyCharm. When you install it in PyCharm, it's actually not installed on your local host. It's not installed on your machine. It's literally just in a sandbox, the sandbox environment where it runs all your code, all of your libraries and modules, and it just stays there. So it's essentially like it's a protection where you don't have to worry about installing a whole bunch of libraries on your local machine. And then it's also a sandbox. So it's a really solid testing environment. Now, we're going to have a few different options here depending on your operating system. The professional version, which is, I believe it's $8 a month, and then the community version, which is free. We can go ahead and go with the community edition. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run this. And this is a little bit of a larger program, so it may take a little bit longer to install depending on your internet speeds. So let's go ahead and minimize this. We're going to click yes here. And I'm going to do next. I'm going to install it in the default location. That's fine. These are perfectly fine. You can just leave these all default, to be honest. That's typically what I usually do. And then install and install. That's it. Pretty much everything here at this point is default. And we'll give this a few seconds and we'll wait for this to install. Again, it could be a few minutes, give or take. So it's successfully installed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this checkbox so we can run PyCharm community, and I'm going to click finish. So now what this is going to do is this is going to open up a page for us where we can start like actually creating our first virtual environment. So we're just going to definitely not send. Okay. So you can go ahead and choose what theme you want. I always go with the dark theme. Depending on what type of feature plugins you want, you don't really need any of these. And then we'll start to use PyCharm now. So the first thing that you're going to see here is to create a new project. So I'm going to click the create new project button. And I'm just going to save it in the default location. That's fine. The location is really going to depend on like where you want to save it to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do Python series. Now, as you can see, it's going to create a new environment and it's going to use virtual env. And this is what I was talking about before with the pip env, PENV. This is, the few different virtual environments that you can use. We'll use the virtual environment. The base interpreter, again, we only have one version of Python installed, so we'll use that as the base interpreter. And then we'll go ahead and we'll click create here. And then our new, as you can see, our virtual environment is being created. And we're going to have this new virtual environment now ready for us so we can start writing some test code in. So we'll go ahead and we'll wait for this to finish installing. And this is something else that could take a few minutes. It is a larger application, so sometimes it does take a few minutes to kind of get up and running, which is great. We have a little message here from Windows Defender. So, okay, yeah, I've seen this. So the Windows Defender might impact performance. So it looks like it just wants to create some rules for us. So we'll just allow it to create automatically. Click yes here. Okay, and here is our virtual environment. So those are the three things that you need to get started. One, installing Python. Two, installing Visual Studio Code and getting that Python extension. And then three, installing PyCharm. Now, in the next video, what we're going to do is start to dive into white spacing and kind of how the syntax is set up in Python. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.